Welcome to Business Mentorship Keeping It Real, where we feature entrepreneurs and enterprise leaders who participate in our guest blog found on shareyourstories.online. Our guest is Margaret Boersma, who is a teacher trainer, an artist, a speaker, and a consultant. And we're going to discuss how Margaret is helping both teachers and students find creativity in education. And Margaret joins us from Toronto, Ontario. Welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Well, you know, one of the things that we do is we ask folks to send in questions if they won't have an opportunity to join us. And believe it or not, I did get a question based on our social media post that we had done yesterday. And the question is, how do you teach someone creativity in education?
Oh, I love that question. How do I teach somebody creativity in education? I think it's very important to be creative and to be trained and flex that creative muscle. We all have it, but some of us haven't developed it as much as we could to have a thriving life, actually. So the way I do it is with children, I often have them enter a story. So they become the characters in the story, but it's all improvised. I don't give them a script or anything. I just say, for example, I'll give you an example. Are you interested?
Sure, absolutely.
So I do this for all ages, and adults love it too. But this particular example is for kindergartens. And I took the Three Billy Goats Gruff, the fairy tale, and created a story out of it. And the kids enter the story. So the story is, I called it Monster Problems to Solve. And so, I mean, adults can relate to that topic too,
for
right?
sure.
We all have monster
You've got
problems
me
to solve.
intrigued. I'm waiting.
So I have the kids create community, and we do fun things like I'm an artist in residence once in a while, every year actually, for my local school board. And so I create these units too for them, and the teachers are furiously taking notes and participating. But basically in the Monster Problems to Solve, the kids create this imaginary playground and what's on the playground, and they give me all their ideas. And well, what about food stands? And what do you like to eat? Okay, that's in it too. That's in it too. And what are your favorite rides? And so they're using their imagination and creating, right, what this is all looking like. And then we put it on a big piece of paper or on the board, and we draw it. And then the kids get to add their own things to it. And so it becomes real for them. And kids are really good with their imaginations. If you try and make it real, coming from where they're coming from, that's the creative element, and they're flexing their creative muscle. And like any story, you know, I shouldn't go there yet. Then there's this magical bridge. It's the only access to their favorite playground, where there's free babysitting. They don't have to wait for their parents to come off work, all of it. And everyone trusts these people. And so this magical bridge, however, is really fun. And they can't just walk across it because there's
that would be just too boring.
I know, right? So there's music. I play music like the can, or any kind of genre music, and it differs all the time. And they move the way across the bridge the way the music tells them to. So that's magical and creative right there. Yeah. And of course, I'm busy doing it with them, because if you don't get involved,
it's got to be fun for everyone.
It's got to be fun for everyone, and it's a role model for the kids to be creative in their movements.
Yeah.
Well, then the next day they come to school, and this is the problem. Every story has one. There's a monster that lives under the bridge, and he does not let us cross the bridge. Our only access to the playground. What will we do? And so they brainstorm a bunch of ideas, and the first one is usually kill them. And I'm thinking as an adult, oh my goodness, we still have all kinds of wars in the world. Why? Right. Because we haven't taught our population how to problem solve through dialogue.
Right.
And so we have to come up with a win-win solution. So what do we want? We want access to the playground. What does the monster want? Well, we don't know. So how are we going to find out?
Right.
So they end up deciding to interview the monster, and I come in role as the monster. And I have a different walk and a
Isn't
different talk and
that
an old shirt on.
cool?
I'm telling you how I developed this.
I love it.
And so they end up finding out through their questions, they find out that the monster gets a big headache every time somebody pounds on their roof. And then as the monster, I say, do you ever get a headache? So the empathy is developed immediately.
Sure.
Right. So I'm working on social emotional skills while I do this kind of educational drama, which is the creative component.
Right.
So then I come out of role and I come back and, what did the monster say? And they have to tell me in logical order. And these are all expectations in the language arts curriculum that teachers need to cover.
Right.
And so then, well, what are we going to do? So then they have win-win. So I said, the monster wants this. He doesn't want a headache. And we need to get to our playground. What are we going to do? So they come up with different ideas and they decide if that would work for both parties. So we're negotiating a win-win conversation here.
Isn't that great? I love the negotiating skills that you bring into it because, who doesn't need to be able to problem solve in a win-win environment?
And they listen to each other.
Right.
And then they build on that. Well, that's really hard
great?
for 5 and 6 year olds.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did it with a grade 1 class once. And oh my goodness, they said, well, we live on this side of the bridge, not on the playground, but maybe if we ask the monster to live with us in our house, then the bridge is free and we can go over. And another kid jumped up right away and said, I'm not letting a monster live in my house. Oh, I said, well, you go over there and you go over there. Now, how many agree with this person? If you want the monster to live in your house, 20 kids lined up there. If you disagree, come over here. 5 kids were over there. It took them 25 minutes of negotiating. I couldn't believe this 6-year-old's doing this.
Wow.
And one at a time, they were convinced through reason.
And then they moved over.
To go over. Yeah.
Isn't that great?
So there's a way that I teach.
That's a wonderful example. That's a really wonderful way to tie in the learning disciplines because, as adults, it's been a long time since we've been to school for most of us. And if you're a grandparent or a parent, we really don't have an idea of what, we think that kids are, playing and coloring and, doing those kinds of things. We don't really have a grasp of what's actually happening behind the doors in the schools, right?
Yeah.
So that's a really wonderful way to give us a visual I love the story concept. And I love the way that you ask them for participation and they have an opportunity to connect with each other as well as with you.
Most teachers can't teach that way.
Right.
But they love being part of the learning.
Oh, for sure. And I can see why adults would love it too, to be quite honest. I mean, because who doesn't want to use their imagination? I was talking to an artist on one of our podcasts and I said to her, remember the time when you used to come home from kindergarten and you would put your art up on the fridge? Yes. And it didn't matter what it looked like. Everybody in the house said it looked great. And you were, this wonderful artist. Well, what happens to that? Because then I was just talking to a friend the other day who said, oh, I would never go to an art workshop. Are you kidding? I can't draw. I can't. And I thought, wow, what happened to that creativity and finger painting and all those things that we do when we're young and in school and we have no inhibition? Yeah. Right? Yeah, I can respond to that if you like. Yes, for sure. They say, and I believe there's stats on this, that by about grade 3, the school system has pounded that out of them. That confidence to be creative is pounded out of them because there has been such an emphasis on marks. And when kids are in kindergarten and grade 1, they don't care about marks, right? So by grade 3 or 4, they do. Right. Because they get a report card. Yeah. And the report card has marks on it. Right. And parents want the marks because, if you just write anecdotal notes on it, the parents feel they don't know where their kid stands. And that's important because in that previous generations, we thought marks and knowing where your kid is compared to everyone else is really important. Right. And it isn't. Right. You want them to grow up in their own strengths. Right. Not that you don't want to develop the weaker things into more strengths, but as a child, I was not good at typical school stuff. Right. And I felt stupid the rest of my life. And it's only in the last, couple of decades that I realized I was living a lie. Right. And so many of us are living a lie. We're made to feel like we're not creative. We're made to feel like we're not able to learn.
because you don't learn in the typical way of, you know,
Right.
sit, memorize, and regurgitate on a test, for example.
Right. It's so true. You know, there's so many things I think that have happened over time. You know, I always say we get to a different age and stage with every decade in life, right? Things become a little bit different. Our priorities change. Our social networks change, and the things that we're striving towards change.
Yes.
But we don't really, I find, bring with us the skills to help us manage the change.
Right.
And I love how you mentioned empathy, because I think that that's a skill that we can learn. Yeah. And it's also one that we need to nurture, especially now where we're finding there's so many challenges that we experience throughout the day. So, yes. And I know that one of the things that you do is based on emotional intelligence, and you use the skills of emotional intelligence as a way in which to help people excel, or maybe even, you know, expand on some of those things that they don't do very well.
Yes.
So in terms of the dynamics, I mean, as an emotional intelligence coach as well, I mean, I think we speak the same language, but for our viewing and listening audience who may not understand what the emotional intelligence dynamics are, if there was a skill that you think, based on your experience now, teaching, not only helping teachers teach better, but helping students connect with teachers, is there one of those emotional intelligence skills that you feel we really do need to nurture as adults?
Oh, yes. Dysregulation, for example. You know, we have so many students in our schools now that are losing it.
Struggling.
You know? They're so struggling, and they communicate through their behavior. And as educators, we're not taught how to deal with that. A lot of them do have mental health challenges, but I think we can avoid a lot of the adult population as well as the child population spiral down the mental health channel if we raise the bar on adult education for mental health or for emotional intelligence. Let me put it that way. I'm not a mental health professional.
Right.
But there are a lot of people who are just spiraling and people around them who don't know what to do. And I think that's really sad, because we can raise that bar.
Right.
So how do you regulate your own emotions? How do you teach a child to regulate their emotions? How do you teach empathy? How do you gain empathy? How do you create that muscle?
How do you learn it?
Right. How do you teach responsibility? How do you take more responsibility? How do you up your integrity level? Because without integrity, nothing works.
Oh, I love that. I love that word, because, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, it's been a week. And it's been a week of surprises where I have thought I knew a business colleague or a personal friend. I've had more than one example this week. And I've put it down to, what the heck has happened to our integrity?
Yeah.
What the heck has happened to when you say something you're going to follow through?
Right.
Or meaning what we say.
Yes.
And being true to the people that we're making promises to, or we're making commitments to. What on earth has happened to that? So I love your reference to integrity, and almost with integrity, I put credibility.
Well, you get credibility when you're trustworthy.
Exactly.
And if you're not trustworthy, you don't have integrity. So that word comes back all the time.
That's so true.
And trust is the basis of every relationship, whether it's business or family.
So true.
And once you lose trust, you can regain it, but it's hard and it takes time. And, you know, so don't lose trust in the first place. And we always need to restore our integrity. So how do you do that? And I have developed the Make It Right formula for that.
Excellent. So let's give us an example of, I'm in a professional environment, and I'm the leader of a team, and I'm noticing that the dynamics of the team are kind of crumbling a little bit, and we need a little help in being able to put some of the pieces of the puzzle back together to regain trust and credibility.
Yeah.
Is there a little exercise, or is there a tip that you could share with our viewing and listening audience who may be in the corporate world, maybe even in their family or their friend dynamic, and they're saying, okay, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, but is there some way in which I can help to fix the problem, or at least start people on the path to regaining that trust and integrity?
Thanks for the question. First, I would say a lot of people don't realize that they are always balancing their trustworthiness, and they lose it quickly. And you can recover from it, and not with a quick "I'm sorry." So I start with making them aware that they too are struggling with this integrity issue all the time. No matter what your intentions are, we always struggle with it, especially if we push ourselves to be the best we can in the world, you know. And a lot of us are in professions where we feel pushed, or we are pushed, and so we cross the line all the time. So I do this walk across the floor exercise. So when I say a statement that rings truth for you, just go to the other side of the room. And so that's when they really get, because they're physicalizing it too, it helps the learning internalize.
Sure.
They, so things like, I'm always on time. I show up for work every day on time. Walk across the room if that's true for you. Well, a lot of people don't. Walk across the room, you know, and they have to really check in with themselves. Or when I say yes to an appointment with someone or getting together with somebody and something more interesting comes along, I cancel the first appointment. And it's like, you can see them thinking, oh yeah, I've done that. And then out loud, they're not supposed to talk out loud in this exercise. Out loud, I hear, well, it depends. It depends. It depends. And I'm thinking in their head.
Justifying. You're justifying.
Justifying.
Right?
Those are the reasons and excuses, right?
Yeah,
Come
for
into
sure.
their minds. And so they want to let me know about it. No, quiet. And so in the end, they feel almost, a lot of them feel a little bit defeated. It's like, oh man, you know, I thought I was, but I'm not. And I said, well, listen, none of us are.
Right.
And this is what you can do about it. I call it the make it right formula. Do you want me to tell you about the make it right?
Absolutely. You've piqued our interest now. You've mentioned it twice. And I'm like, okay, my next question was going to be, I think you need to tell us what the make it right formula is.
Okay. So it's 4 steps. And I finally got an acronym for it. WIPE. Wipe. You have to wipe the slate clean to start over.
Love it.
So
love it.
W is what happened. Don't include the story. It's more like, I said this, you did that, or said that. Done.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, it's kind of admitting.
Cut and dry.
Without the stories, the excuses, and the reasons.
Right.
The next part is the most important. It's I. What's the implication on somebody else? So how does it
affect someone?
Yeah, I'm losing the word, but it starts with I. And it's about, anyways, how did it affect you? But first of all, how did it affect the other person?
Right.
And that's where you really have to get into their world.
And you have to walk across the room.
Yeah, it's the impact. That's the I. So how does it impact the other person? Well, it probably impacted you because you were really expecting me to come, and I really let you down by canceling at the last minute. And I know that we're good friends, and I really let you down, and I get it. You know, you really have. I think when you're doing this, you really have to get that impact. Like, what's it like from the other person?
Right.
And you can say 2 or 3 things, what it might have been like, and then ask them, is there anything I'm missing? And then be ready to say that.
Right.
And when that's done, you say how it impacted you. You know, after I canceled, I felt really badly because I didn't really have a good reason. It was just something else came up, or whatever you want to say to that person, right? And I feel horrid about. Tell how you're feeling in that. That's impact. The next one is P, plan. So what are you going to do differently next time? And tell them, you know, next time I'm not going to do that, because I can see that is hurtful everywhere. And I will find a way to make the other one to, you know, change the time or have a conversation, whatever your plan is, say it and then follow up on it. And then the E is elevate the other person. You can give them a compliment. You know, you really are my best friend, and that's why I feel so horrible, or whatever, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to be about feelings, but it has to elevate them. So maybe you invite them to a special event that would elevate them. So you have to be creative in how you think about elevating the person. So that's wipe.
I love it. I love it, Margaret. I love how you've kind of taken what I can only assume is a lifetime of learning, and because we all make mistakes and we all have to pick ourselves and up and dust ourselves off and move in a more positive direction. But I love how you've taken something that helps everybody, it's not just for kids. It's not just for teachers. It's for you and I. It's for the population. And we all want to be good humans. You know, we all want to make positive contributions. So I think you've given us some really wonderful things. And I love wipe. I'm sure everybody's going to be sending you messages about wipe. Now, one of the things that we do in the guest blog is we ask people to share 3 words of advice. And I think some people might say yours is wipe. That's 4 words. But at any rate, they are integrity, open, and optimistic. So why are those 3 words important to you and what you do?
Well, integrity is really important because I believe that without integrity, nothing really works. It doesn't work for others. It doesn't work for you. You feel crappy. You feel overwhelmed. You get dysregulated. All those feelings that we don't really want to have and embrace. And life doesn't go the way you want it to because something's out of whack. It's out of line. So nothing works without integrity is really, really important to know. And I taught you how to restore integrity so you can always be in integrity. And so that's our goal. The second one was open. I think we have to be open to learning. We have to be open to hearing each other's perspectives and be compassionately curious if it differs from ours, especially if it differs from ours. So, you know, I hear you saying something that I don't agree with, and then tell yourself, be open. Like, what is it that makes you say that? Tell me more, right? Yeah. And I think in our world nowadays, it's even more important to be open because there's very polarizing opinions about different things. And I think openness is important in order to gain an understanding. You know, and I think that really helps too with formulating your own ideas and solidifying them if you can learn the different perspectives in a way that is deep, not shallow. Right. And optimistic, I think we need to be positive and optimistic people. That's how you have the best quality of life. And I am optimistic. And I think we all want good quality of life. So if we focus on what's positive in our lives and we have our self-talk circling around that, then we will find more things that are positive in our day. And if we focus on what didn't go right or what someone said that hurt us, we're going to find a whole lot more of that. And how would you rather live, right?
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. Well, I really want to thank you for spending some time with us today because, you know, you've given us a lot of food for thought. And I think when those folks who originally read your guest blog and before they joined us today, they probably thought this was going to be more centered on telling and teaching. It certainly was teaching, but it was not just teaching of a certain age group or a demographic. It was actually teaching all of us how to, and giving us maybe a skill of how we can use it in our day-to-day life that makes it a little easier for us to navigate some of the challenges that we face. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
You're welcome.
And to you, our viewing and listening audience, I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this edition of Keeping It Real, where we introduced you to the person behind the logo. If you'd like to connect with our guest, you'll find Margaret's contact information in the description portion below. I'm Trish Tonai, founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online and subscribe to our channel, Business Mentorship Keeping It Real. Thanks again for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting you next time when we share another great idea.